The RCEP, or the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, was signed by 15 Asian countries. Is this as big as an Asian version of the European Union? And what is the cost of India staying out? That's the question we are trying to ask. It is important because it is bigger than the European Union and the North American Union, the United States, Canada, and Mexico, in terms of size. Look at the size. It's 30% of the global GDP, these 15 countries who have signed it, and 30% of the world population is involved in these 15 countries. And it is expected that by 2030, this group of 15 could add $200 billion approximately to global trade and about 0.2% to global GDP. What are the main features? What are the main countries? All the ASEAN countries, just in alphabetical order: Brunei, Cambodia, Indonesia, Myanmar, Malaysia, Laos, Philippines, Thailand, Vietnam. And the non-ASEAN countries: China, New Zealand, Japan, and Australia. You should remember that the Australian continent has also joined in, and so has Japan. So this is a bit of developed countries as well as emerging economies. Main goal to reduce tariffs over 20 years to nil between these 15 countries. It also expects to iron out the rules of origin. This is important. Now, just dwell a minute on this. At the moment, even in an FTA country, when you have a free trade zone agreement, if, say, you're buying a bicycle from Cambodia buys from Vietnam, if it has Australian parts or American parts, it doesn't come under FTA. Now it is in a sense ironed out, because within these 15 countries, the parts can come from any of them, and the RCEP agreements will apply. Other key features, the provisions will also include eventually intellectual property, telecommunications. It will include e-commerce, financial services, and other professional services as well. So it seeks to become very big, but you must remember it doesn't include visas, etc., which the European Union did. Okay, these people have not yet signed, 6 ASEAN countries and 3 other non-ASEAN countries. So there is still some time. It may start only by 21 or 22. And it's important that it's not immediately benefiting the ASEAN countries much. That's the guess. The other feature is that traditional rivals, China and Japan, historical rivals, are also coming in. And currently, although China and Australia have a lot of trade, they also indulge in some name-calling. But they've also decided to keep political problems aside, and they have joined in. For India, there is an open invitation. But as we know, India walked out of the RCEP last year. And for India, the big issue is the tariffs. If India wants to join, say, 4 years down the line or 5 years down the line, then if every country has cut tariffs by 1 percentage point in these 5 years, then when India joins, it will have to cut by 5 percentage points. What is India's demand? India says, don't take 2014 as the base year, take 2019 or 20 as the base year, because in these 5 years, they've increased tariffs by about 5 percentage points, especially for things like cell phones, and we don't want to go back on it. The other demand India has is that, you want a carve-out for investment. We may have a special status for investment with some of the Western countries. We don't want to give it to China, for instance, because, we've had problems. We also want a carve-out for essential goods like agriculture, milk, textiles, where we think we have vulnerable people. We don't know whether the RCEP will be opposed to it, because even Japan has a lot of tariffs on agri-goods. Also, we don't want a free pass for countries like China, with which we have a border, for certain investment issues. That's another condition that India put in, which perhaps did not get a lot of attention. But this is the biggest worry, that cheap Chinese goods would come via Vietnam to us, come via Thailand to us. And that is one of the big objections that India had to the RCEP. Services, again, India wants to export a lot of services, nurses, school teachers, and there you have a lot of non-tariff barriers, and that may have been another worry. But let's ask the expert. Joining me now to tell us whether India is going to be impacted badly when the RCEP becomes as big as, say, the European Union, whether we were wise to stay out because we could get overwhelmed, is former Vice Chairman of the Niti Aayog and by far one of India's best trade economists, Dr. Arvind Panagaria. Dr. Panagaria, thank you very much, sir, for sparing time for us today. The first question really is this RCEP a big moment Is it like the day, in the 60s when the European Common Market was signed? Are we on the threshold of the creation of a very big trade bloc in world trade?
So, Lata, when the European Union started, it was a very different world. Where this arrangement is starting is quite different. So it is an important development, there is no doubt. At the same time, I think, I would not overstate it, because a lot of the countries within the union or within the arrangement already have agreements with one another. The big new thing that happens now is about concerns three countries: China, South Korea, and Japan. These are the three countries that did not have an arrangement of free trade, some sort of preferential trade agreement in the past. And what RCEP does is it brings these three countries into the same arrangement. So that, I think, is the one major difference, major development. These are all large economies. Actually, of the four largest economies in Asia, these are the three, India being the fourth one. So that, I think, is the crux. Now, of course, there are other issues in which it makes progress. You mentioned rules of origin. And in the previous arrangements, which had more of a bilateral nature, like ASEAN with Japan or ASEAN with China, those rules of origin now get multilateralized. Because, as you just pointed out, all 15 are in the same arrangement, those rules of origin will apply to all 15. And what that means is that if the parts are coming from, or components of a product are coming from any one of these countries, then it qualifies for the lower tariff within the union.
Okay.
So those are the major kind of differences.
So is the Indian worry justified that we could get overwhelmed with Chinese exports?
See, on the economic front, Lata, I have always maintained that we have to confront our competitors. So we should not be afraid, and we are capable. And 1991, we were far, far more protected, and we were afraid that we'll be decimated and so forth. Quite the contrary, our industry actually became far stronger. Today, the industry, no doubt, is much stronger than what it was in 1991. We have embraced exports and imports. Our both exports and imports have more than tripled since 1991. And it has been good for us. We have grown far, far more rapidly during these years. So I don't see that as the problem. And as you know, I was very enthusiastic that India should go for ASEAN, for the RCEP. We should sign it. But I think, there has been a problem at the border. And for those geopolitical reasons, which have the potential eventually to spill over in economic arena as well, I have changed my mind. So I'm no longer as enthusiastic for India to join in. Actually, I think geopolitically we cannot trust China the way I thought we could. And so that has led me to have.
But is not China pretty powerful in the South China Sea? And yet countries bordering it, which are ASEAN countries like Cambodia, like Vietnam, they have gone ahead and signed, though they know that China can be way more big brotherly and terrorizing in the South China Sea than it is on the Ladakh border. Nevertheless, they've gone ahead.
Yes, the concerns, geopolitical concerns of India are quite different. Right? We are in a direct war with China now, and that is a different game. And as we know, Chinese government doesn't see the difference between economics and geopolitical relationships. One spills over into the other. So that risk remains. Yes, the smaller countries have joined in. Smaller countries had also joined in with China, with the United States. Although the United States later in the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, although the United States later withdrew. In some ways, the geopolitical and economic relations for them are a little different in a way that, in any case, you know, if even if they were not in the arrangement with China, China can very readily inflict injuries on those countries. We are larger, and so the injuries that China inflicts on us will be of very different nature, and we will be bilaterally there in you know, and the rivers will inflict injuries on them as well. So it gets into a different kind of strategic relationship.
Okay, well, let me look at it purely as an economic issue and how things may pan out 5 years down the line. Do you think the RCEP can increase supply chains between themselves, and our big ambition of breaking into the supply chain because of the China +1 desire of Western nations could not be fulfilled?
Well, you know, from the economic standpoint, I've always said that, you know, we want to be in this very big market, and particularly if we are hoping to bring in a lot of the multinationals who are currently operative in China but want to diversify elsewhere to our shores, then having access to this very large market is a huge plus. I mean, not only for our firms also benefit obviously from having access to the very large Chinese, Japanese, South Korean markets, but particularly from the viewpoint of multinationals, whether they are of Indian origin or of Western or any other origin, being in that market is a good thing. You know, having tariff-free access to this entire market. So on the economic considerations, I have absolutely no reservations. I think, you know, on those considerations alone, we should be in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we do pay an economic price, but we have to because of strategic reasons, is what you're saying, because of military reasons. Now, assuming that over time we patch up our differences, after all, we had a long peace period as well with China from probably the 70s right up to 2019-20. We didn't have that many border skirmishes with China. Assuming we hit peace, do you think we should exercise this open invitation and walk in at some later point? And if we do, what precautions?
Yeah, I mean, the issue is going to be trust. I mean, can trust be reinstated? That's going to be uphill. You know, it took many years. You know, as you know, after the 1962 war, there's been a long period of more than 50 years that there were no skirmishes and we peacefully lived with China. And Prime Minister Modi actually made a huge proactive effort to develop the relationship with China, to strengthen it. He went to Wuhan, he took the initiative, then he invited Mr. Xi to India and Tamil Nadu. But I think that trust got broken. And to me, it seems, you know, this is not my field. I'm not, you know, I'm not the international relations person or the defense person. But purely commonsensically, I think it'll take a few years before the trust is put back in place. But if it can be, then certainly I think, you know, we should be in that market. Economically, I think it makes every sense. I mean, and it would be, to me, it's really no-brainer economically for us to join RCEP.
Okay. Well, I will come to the economic question in just a minute, but I do have other questions about the success of the RCEP itself, given the developments in the United States. I'll come back in a minute after a break. Dr. Panagaria, please don't go away. This is a very important conversation. Welcome back to Indianomics. We've been speaking with trade economist and former vice chairman of the Niti Aayog, Dr. Arvind Panagaria, on India sitting out of the RCEP, the regional comprehensive economic partnership that has just been signed between 15 countries in Asia, including, of course, Australia and New Zealand. Dr. Panagaria, thank you very much for staying on. Well, do you think the RCEP itself can be a great success story? Because it is coming at a very tumultuous period in American politics. What if Biden were to come in? Will he start conversations for the Trans-Pacific partnership? Will he respect the WTO and go back to it? If WTO becomes a more formidable force than it was under Trump, then will the RCEP face other problems? What are your answers to that issue? The future of the RCEP itself under Biden?
Okay, so there are three questions in what you have asked. Let me see if I can keep track.
Yes.
If not, please come back. So first, how big a deal is RCEP? Frankly, I think, as I said, it's the three countries which were not in an arrangement, and they are not in an arrangement. Secondly, also, I should point out that both South Korea and Japan have very little protection. So their tariff levels are not super high. China's tariffs are a little higher. I would say, it's a very open economy. Okay. So in this sense, one can overstate because of the number of countries, because there's 30% of the GDP involved and so forth. But how much on the margin, how much difference this will make? I would say not a lot, simply because they are already very open economies, except China. I think, so the access of these other countries, particularly of Japan and South Korea to the Chinese market will become eventually tariff-free. So that's where the big kind of difference will come. ASEAN already has arrangements with these other countries and so. You're right, with China also and with Japan as well. So I think one can overstate that impact a bit.
Okay, so there are not too much of tariffs waiting to come down. Only a bit of Chinese tariffs can come down, which can advantage Japan and South Korea. But now the point is, can it be destabilize the RCEP's creation because of the Biden presidency?
So now the issue on TPP, right? Because TPP had been originally signed by the United States, but President Trump pulled out of it. Will President Biden return to it? He may. I think, he may. He clearly, again, for very strategic kind of reasons, that TPP had kept China out, and they didn't want China in there, right? And the statement that President Biden has also made when asked about, whether he would join RCEP, he said, we don't want traffic rules to be written by countries like China. So he clearly is not going to go into RCEP. But as a counterforce, he may certainly think of coming back to TPP. Now, TPP agreement itself may have been changed a little bit and so forth from where the United States had negotiated it. Not sure, of the details, but probably not in a big way. So I think that certainly is a possibility. Now, the WTO, that I think is the big unknown here, and this is where the biggest attention is required of the United States. Whether we will see some progress is not clear. Right now, both China and the United States are in big violation on account of having imposed tariffs on each other without any permission or any authorization, should say, from the WTO. So they're clearly in violation. A panel has already ruled against the United States, but I'm sure that another panel will rule against China as well for this. But the problem is a lot bigger than that, which is that in dispute settlement body, the United States doesn't like it the way it exists right now. It wants to change that. That's a problem that is not cropped up just under President Trump, but actually under President Obama also. President Obama was also not approving of the judges that were being appointed to the appellate body, and so. That's a problem continuing, and
that doesn't endanger the RCEP, right? Even if the WTO is empowered, RCEP can still exist, or will it be in trouble?
No, absolutely not. RCEP stands on its own. It is and they are following the WTO rules on that. There are certain rules on free trade agreements, which the RCEP is following. So. No.
Not a problem. Okay, now I wanted to ask you the other issue that people were pointing out, that India wants more services to be exported, but these 15 countries, each of them have one non-tariff barrier or the other. Is that a legit criticism that, we anyway are not big manufacturing exporters, we are service exporters, and the RCEP doesn't give us too much benefits?
Well, I think we ought to be much bigger in manufacturers, is my take on that. And now that China is exiting already products like apparel, footwear, and that is where we need to come. I mean, this is a population of what once India is included 3 billion plus.
Yes.
Just imagine, even if 2 shirts per person is being manufactured, that's 6 billion shirts. Somebody will have to be manufacturing that. How can, with a 500 million workforce,
yes,
how can we not be doing manufacturing? And these are not workers IT can employ or financial sectors services can employ. They cannot do it. I mean, in the end, if you want to really create good jobs for these people, we have to be in manufacturers. So to say that we are not in manufacturers and therefore let's not bother with it, to me, it's a complete red herring.
Okay. What about the argument that there are anyway too many non-tariff barriers? Japan has standards unique to Japan, so we are not able to make headway there. Indonesia, the auto sector has import permit and quotas, and therefore we are also not able to make too much of headway over there. There is an argument which says that there are too many non-tariff barriers in many of these countries. Therefore, we will not make headway even if we join in.
Well, look, if Vietnam can actually live with it, Cambodia can live with it, why can we not? I mean, why can't we meet those standards? I mean, we can negotiate. I'm not saying, we ought to negotiate the best deal we can. So prior to Galwan, when last year we decided not to sign the RCEP, that is how I had seen it, that, we want a better deal. And that we should do.
Yes.
But at the same time, look, what are the standards on shirts, trousers, footwear, furniture? I mean, those are the
there
products.
There are no sophisticated standards there.
Yeah. I mean, and if we can't meet standards in those fields, God help us.
Okay.
So I think we are looking at it the wrong way.
Okay. And this final question that, we have already increased tariffs from 2014 to now to help this production-linked incentive scheme or to allow ourselves to become a hub for mobile phone makers. And now we have to roll all that back. So the argument that we should start with 2020 as the tariff base, is that a fair argument against RCEP?
Look, it's a matter of negotiation in the end. If we can get away with it and the other 15 countries accept it, then that's fine. But should that be a reason for us to walk away purely based on economic grounds? No, that should not be a reason. And in fact, if we are saying that the production-linked incentives anyway are for 5 years. So if this is some sort of infant industry promotion we are trying to do, I don't believe in that personally, I should say, but if that's what we are trying to do, in 5 years' time, it should be over.
Anyway,
we should be, so we should be willing to then open up.
Okay. Point taken, Dr. Panagaria. You've, point by point rebutted the fact that for economic reasons, we don't have good arguments to stay out of the RCEP. But when you're at war with a country or at near war, then perhaps you will have to demur. Thank you very much for giving us such a detailed understanding of the RCEP and India's position. Hopefully, if peace returns, then we must seriously ponder about getting back into the RCEP. That's the word from the foremost expert on trade economics with respect to India. With that, we wrap up this edition of Indianomics. Many thanks for watching.